Hello and welcome to the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. This is launching on the 15th of December 2023 and I think this is an excellent time for this episode because we're talking about time, what it means to create more time, what the 80-20 principle is really about. Like, we all talk about it a lot, but how do you actually implement it and what does it really mean to you? I think this is a really great time of year to release this episode because everyone just feels 90% of people just feel quite frantic at this time of year, trying to wrap everything up for Christmas, too much judgment against all the things that you haven't done this year that you wanted to do. So take a breath and enjoy this opportunity to reflect upon how you're using time and how you can actually create more of it as you go into the year ahead, and to give you an opportunity to reflect on what you're prioritising at this time of year to help you get more out of life, because actually Christmas is all about family and the things that we're working for because of the business, and it's so easy to lose sight of that. So today you've got myself and Dave talking about how you can create more time using the power of the 80-20 principle. Let's do this.
Hello there.
And we are joining you today, still from Thailand, in the autumn of 2023 is when this one was recorded. And today we are talking about time.
Time. Elusive concept.
Time is not what you think it is. And really, the whole point that we want to explore today is, kind of what is time and how do you make time work for you rather than being a slave to it. And we've chosen to do this today because it's a real present theme that we're seeing in a lot of our mentees at the moment, and other people too. And it just felt like this was something that the world wanted us to discuss right now.
Yeah.
So what is the problem that you're seeing at the moment?
The thing that I think we hear a lot in clients is people are very, very busy, and we all are. As an entrepreneur, you are always in theory busy because there's always too much to do. The to-do list is in fact never ending for all of us. So what we often hear in sessions from mentees is this concept of I'm just too busy, I haven't had enough time, that priority, I didn't manage to get it done this week because there just wasn't enough time, I was too busy. Just this language constantly coming out, and it's almost like it's not just at one point, it's almost like a identity. There's this thing right at the beginning, you say to someone, how are you doing?
I'm just so busy.
It's like,
that's who you are? Okay,
that's
good.
who they are right now. It's just, I am just so busy. And actually, yes, we can be busy at times, but the question is, how are you using your time, and is it going to the right things? And so often the people who are saying these things are not necessarily putting their time into the right actions, and hence this
conversation today.
Yeah.
So I think the idea that we've generally been decent at this, but I think we've got better and better at this. And for me, that we read a book, which I think we probably mentioned before, called The Big Leap by a guy called Gay Hendricks. And he talks about the concept of time basically not being what you think it is. And yes, there are only 24 hours in a day, so we kind of think that time is really finite, but actually we have complete unlimited choice over how we use those hours. And really it's our self-sabotage that prevents us from using those hours in the way that we most want to.
Yeah. So I think the first thing I want to say, I think this is how we've started to view it, because there's a concept in Gay Hendricks' books, I think he calls it Einstein time. But I think when I first read that, it was almost like mind-blowing enough that I literally couldn't get my head around it. It was just like blew my mind, but I couldn't make sense of it. And I think nowadays we say, basically, you are the creator of your time. You are the creator of time, not just your time, of any time, and how you use it. So you can go in and make choice at any moment of any day as to exactly how and when you're using time. And if you use it in the right way, you won't be busy. And if you use it in the wrong way, you will be busy. It's as simple as that. And the first and most powerful concept I think that brings this to the fore is the concept of the 80-20 principle, which is one we're very fond of because it's so powerful. It's been so powerful for us, and if you can nail this concept, you are literally gonna, well, in theory,
just change your life.
It's not just change your life, but if you, for example, overnight you could drop down a completely hectic 100% busy life down to just 20% busy life, because that's the concept, right?
Let's lay out, just explain the 80-20 principle, just in case some people haven't heard of it before, or just to reconnect with it. What
just
is
to reconnect.
it?
So the concept of the 80-20 principle is that 80% of your results, of the success you're having, is coming from only 20% of the time you are spending. So, and there's lots of other uses of that, but
and vice versa. 80% of what you do contributes to 20% of the results.
Right.
And there's like examples where it's like 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your clients, for example. And then the opposite way is true. And this is kind of like, it's just, there's so many instances that this just plays out throughout life.
And it is just a simple fact. You know, it might not be exactly 80-20, but there is this simple fact that the smaller amount of your time is getting the bulk of your reward in life. And that, if we can start to see this and start to see in every single action we're taking where that 20% is and how we can spend that 20% to get the 80% of results, and start letting go of the 80% of effort we're putting in that is only getting the smaller 20% of results, and start getting rid of that, you can free up so much time, and you can start to create this life where actually you're getting the same amount done in a fifth of the time.
Yeah, and that is mind-blowing, right? Because you're right, like it's the difference between doing a 5-day week and a 1-day week.
Whoa.
Now, I think therefore, and I think it's a journey to figuring out your 20%. So it's not that I think that you have to go straight to the 20% and only do that, but just keep working towards that as a principle. Yeah. So how do we find the 20%?
Well, I think the first thing to say is actually what stops us from finding the 20%. Because I think this is if we can get going to our lifestyle mastery has the whole self-awareness area, right? Which is mindset area, which is self-awareness is the first part of it, and then it goes through to overcoming that obstacle in order to become the new version of yourself. So the first part of this is awareness, and the awareness in this case is, if you're not doing this, why are you not doing it? Why are you bothering to spend all that time on 80% of the stuff that is only getting you 20% of the results? And the fact is, it's not...
We would just rationally say, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm only doing what is absolutely essential for me to do. But it's not true.
And this is like the classic human trait of self-sabotage that everyone has, like we have it, every single human being has it, which is pretty much some storyline behind you is driving your decision making, driving your thought processes, and that storyline, which is based on historical emotional traumas, is actually bringing up reasons and rationalizations for why you should do things, and it's different for every person. So quite often, you say to someone, so why did you spend all that time on that thing, like when you didn't need to? And they'll be saying, I had to, I needed to, it was necessary because, and then out comes
blah 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 blah, blah.
The storyline, the life rationalization, and that rationalization can be anything because it's based on whoever that person's historical habitual training, automating training has been. So I think some of the biggest ones we see are like fears based around judgment of what other people will think of you. It's a big one, right?
Let's take creating an investor pack as an example.
Okay.
I think it's a really good example that brings up a lot of stuff for people. So this idea that you kind of want to create something to be able to send to investors who might be interested to invest with you, to help them find out a bit more about you. Oh my God, this job, how it hangs on people's lists in ways that have continued to bamboozle us because it makes no rational sense. So you could spend one day, 4 hours maybe, working on an investor pack. That would be perfectly good enough, but hardly anyone can do it. And invariably, if someone got it done in a week, I would say that would be good. It could easily be months or even actually years.
It's hanging around on the list.
And they, like, capable people, so able to do this stuff, but for some reason they can't do it, and it's because of all these other stories and judgments that are preventing them from doing. So it's like, what is the fear that's preventing Because really, the 80/20 is like, what's the simplest version of an little investor brochure that kind of shows what I'm doing, probably 1 or 2 pages, not 40 pages, just like what's the, a few highlights about what I'm doing. I'm probably going to miss off a load of stuff that, would make it perfect, but actually, does it really matter? Will it do the job of helping someone to understand what we're up to and to be able to give them a sense of if they want to work with us? Yeah, that would be good enough. It's the good enough version. And why can people not do that?
Well, so I think the first one is this kind of perfectionism. Perfectionism, which we've talked about in other episodes, right?
And perfectionism is basically a fear of not being good enough.
Yes.
And not being good enough, and therefore people will judge me. And if people judge me, God, then what? Then who am I? What am I doing with my life? What's the point of even being here? It can get really quite dark at that point.
I think on a logical level, you can see where the perfectionism comes in, because the very fundamental of the 80/20 principle is that by only putting the 20% of the work in, or the time in, you're only getting 80% of the results, which means you're actually ignoring 20% of the results. That means 20% of the people you send that brochure to in its 20% form are going to be not happy with it in some way or another. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to say no, actually.
That's true, actually. Right,
it doesn't mean they're going to say no, and that's the magic of this. Even if you were to say that they 20% are going to say no because you only spent 20% of the time, then even that's better, because your 20% of the time for the 80% of the results is better than the alternative. But I don't think they even say no. It's just 20% of the people are going to look at it and are going to think it's not quite as good as they would want.
What they were looking for.
Right? But then you can still get them to the next meeting.
But equally, you could have spent a year working on this brochure and it still wouldn't be what they're looking for.
Exactly, because you don't know.
Because you don't know. And you can't cover off everything, what everyone wants.
But I think that's the fundamental issue with the 80/20 principle, is that if you are going to really follow it, you have to accept that your 20% of work will mean that you are letting go of 20% of results. You've got to say no to 20% of results to do this. Whereas I think most people are so obsessed with, like, it must be great for everyone. It must be amazing. It must be epic in every way, because then absolutely everyone. But actually, it's just a waste of time, right?
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about it in that way before.
And
you basically got to accept that you are going to get no's and people that aren't interested and people that you turn off because you didn't do it perfectly. Now, right, you're going to get that anyway, but I guess it just becomes... You do increase the chance that people 20% will say no.
And going back to the investor pack, what's really funny or sad about this whole concept is that by following that self-sabotage route and then doing loads of work and getting to the 20-page investor pack that covers absolutely everything you could possibly want.
The investor doesn't even read because they haven't time.
Well, this is the worst thing, is that actually you're sabotaging yourself then, because that means it's not the best thing at that moment for an investor. And what we've seen with investors is that it's a sales process, and if you give them too much information in one go, that you overwhelm them.
You become another job on the list. I'll put that investor brochure on my list. 40 pages. Oof. I'll probably be able to get that in Q4 2024.
They just procrastinate on it because it's too
big. You would. Imagine it happened to you. Like, you're considering working with someone and they send you a massive. Some people might like that, but most of us. 80% of us are just tell me what I need to know.
I just need the basic information that's going to make me understand where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And a 20-page document is not necessary to give that. So what we've seen is that people, because of their fears of whatever judgment, criticism, not being good enough, these fears hold them to the insisting internally that they must do it to a higher level and spend more time on it, which is a waste of time, because actually then it even becomes a worse product because of it, which is crazy, right? But you can't see it yourself because you haven't got the perspective.
And this is what it's really about, isn't it? Because basically all of our fears, it's not just fear though, is it? Fear is a big one, not consciously but subconsciously, that draws us into working on stuff that doesn't matter. But there are other things too, like I think we were talking earlier about scope creep, thinking that you've got to make an investor brochure that helps someone decide if they want to have an initial meeting with you, maybe, or go from being initially interested to starting to have a more of an in-depth conversation with you. That's a clear scope. What would I need to have in that to fulfill that scope? Now, particularly those of us, actually, but you're inclined this way too. I was going to say creators in terms of wealth dynamics are more inclined this way, but I think you have this inclination naturally.
Yeah, probably.
Too. Like, suddenly you're working on it and you're like, but actually, if I could do this thing as well, and actually maybe I won't just work on this one brochure, I'll work on the brochure before then, and I'll improve the deal pack for that, and actually I'll write a briefing process for how someone else can update this in the future, and suddenly you're in this fucking massive project, and it was just quite a small task that had to get done. So like that scope creep, it's also just, again, it's a self-sabotage, isn't it, to prevent you from finishing it, because if you don't finish it, then you can't send it, and if you can't send it, then the person can't say no.
Yes, it's the fear of sending. I mean, we all have that, right? The go for no mentality is a hard one to adapt to. A great book, made a massive difference to me. Go for no.
Richard Fenton and Amanda. Oh, I'm sorry, Amanda, I've forgotten your surname. We'll put it in the show notes.
This book it just turned my world on its head of just saying the more no's you get, the more yeses you get. So you've got to put yourself out there to get the no's. It's such a simple concept, and it's so well portrayed in that book. But we are scared of getting no's as a species. You're scared of rejection, and that's a fear, again, a human-based fear. Rejection is actually a primal fear of death, basically. Rejection from your tribe means death. So we have this fear inbred in us, and that means that basically you will procrastinate, you will scope creep, you will do all of these things to make your investor pack as incredible as possible, using investor pack a lot, as the prime example here, but this is everything.
Many other tasks, yes.
Instead, because in the way that literally just delays the moment you have to send it and potentially be rejected. And that's the moment that actually matters. You just need to get it out there. You need to get the no's. You need to go for them.
And this coming back to where we started, which was being busy, is like all feeds into that reason why you haven't been able to move it along. But actually, being busy, like, if you're wanting to build a property company and do as many deals as you want to do, you're going to have to be able to raise finance. And if you haven't yet raised finance, that investor pack is probably one of the most important tasks in your business. So therefore, you should always have time for your investor pack. And indeed, you do have time. It's just being able to see your limiting beliefs with more clarity to be able to actually overcome it.
And I think that's it, right? Belief systems. We talked a lot about fear so far, but in theory, all of those fears we have bred into us as humans are what have amalgamated into our current belief system, and that's mixed together with everything you were taught as a child, how your parents raised you, the experience you had growing up. All of these things create your personal belief systems, and those belief systems are forcing you down pathways, just forcing you down ways. And what, again, going back to the stories in the head concept, is you will rationalize every action. When you're perfecting that deal pack, there will be a part of you saying, I must do this, because if I don't do this, the person I send it to will not think it's good enough because it doesn't have this thing, and that thing's necessary. And that thing is basically one of your beliefs, or what you think is necessary. You're basically projecting your own beliefs onto whomever is in the world around you. And that projection of our beliefs onto everyone else around us is one of the biggest things that limits us, because you're basically creating a constant barrier based on your belief systems of the world, which aren't true. They're just not true. And also, the more you project them, the more often the other party
you manifest
it, right? If you worry about it and you fear it and you start obsessing about it, you start doing things.
It doesn't seem like I don't quite understand the logic of how, but it's something about how you say things and how you hold back. And even your intention, right? Like, you create the fear in the other person that was never even present to begin with.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've really laid out the problem quite well here. What's the solution?
So we've got this issue of your belief systems, and you've got to start getting that perspective on yourself and seeing the stories your mind is winding and drawing out for you, and start to see where you're saying, oh no, I must do this because, or I can't do this before. And one of the biggest things to look out for is if you become aware of your self-talk and you start to hear in your mind need, must, have to, this is basically the necessary, those words that really are forcing you down a path.
I suppose
Can't is a big one as well. I can't not do this because, or I can't do that because, immediately you're being driven by a belief that is self-sabotage of some sort.
And it's something that we started calling out in each other at first. It was because you don't even know that you're doing it. You're like, I need to do this, I can't. And until you realise, that's the awareness, that you're saying those things, you can't actually change it. And we started picking each other up on it, be like, need, can't, and then it's ridiculous how much is happening. And we do it with our Dealmaker Accelerator clients, and we brought this up at a retreat a couple of couple of years, no, a year and a half or something ago now, and it was amazing. Just everyone calls each other out when they say it. They're like, need, you said need, and then you just have to reframe the sentence in a way like, you don't need that. I don't need to get my investor pack done. You want to get your investor pack done because it's going to help you to grow your business. And those words immediately kind of constrict us and limit our perceived choices that are available to us. So that's a bit of a sideline, really, sorry.
And I guess, well, along that sideline is this concept that you will, once you start hearing that self-talk, what you realise is that you're constantly defending how you currently are. So we all go through life in a certain state of being at any one time, right? And we have a general way of being. And that state of being incorporates very much our emotional way of being, right? Our general emotional level, our tendencies. Are we more happy, more sad, more depressive? Like, where are we sitting as a standard emotional? What's our standard emotional response to things? Do we get stressed quickly or not? And then each of those comes with a standard thought process that we generally follow. So you have your state of being, and what happens is your brain wants you to stay there. So you will defend it. It's like you will find every reason you must stay how you are right now. And that will be, going back to the deal pack example for an investor pack, it's like your brain will defend why you have to do this rather than focusing on how the hell can you spend less time on it, which is crazy, right?
It's crazy
because you're like spending way too much time on it. It's draining you, it's really hard, you can't get it done, it can't get it off your to-do list, and yet you're still defending that action instead of all that brain power going to, actually there must be an easier way. Let's take an easier route, which is the 80-20 principle.
So this is like how to change it in a very simple way. It's basically saying, be open-minded to feedback about how you are approaching the task. And I think reflecting on some of our recent examples of this, I think that's probably the main thing, that if the person were to go, you know what, okay, maybe I'm not right in how I'm doing it, maybe there's another way that I could approach this that might work better, just that one opening would just start to make, it's like the first domino to a cascade of changes.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I think that between the two of us has changed so much over the last 2 years.
Yes.
Particularly if one of us is like frustrated by maybe not being able to complete a task or not feeling good about something. In the past, we would have really defended why that had to be the case, and now it's like we're really lame at defending it because we're like, oh, but I just don't really have enough time, and you're like, is that, could you look at it a different way? And in the past we've been like, no, I'm totally right because but actually now we kind of soften a lot quicker and go, okay, no, all right, maybe the position that I've taken isn't actually serving me. Let me see if I can change the perspective. And that can just change everything in like minutes or in an instant.
Yeah, it might even be ready already. It's like you were about to spend another 2 hours on something, and then, oh no, actually it's fine how it is. Just one perspective shift, and I can move on to the next really important task. And I think before we go on to other solutions, I was going to say one of the biggest things that holds us back from this, what you just explained there, that way of thinking, is fatigue. And I've only noticed this in the last year more and more in myself, becoming more and more self-aware of fatigue and how it impacts me.
Dave, I don't take breaks, Wigram.
I'm sure there's many people out there like me who are just like, head down, work damn hard. And you're like, just don't bother with breaks because I'll just get on to the next task. I might as well. And actually...
you can do it pretty effectively for quite an extended period of time. Dave is a real workhorse, much more than I am.
Yeah.
Like, you can just go and go and go, and then suddenly you'll just implode because it just basically, it kind of accumulates all the breaks that you didn't take, and then you can crash.
Well, I can, but then that's one side of it. But what I would say that's kind of like the burnout side, right?
That's
but
true.
Let's ignore that, because that's the downside of continuing. But the other downside, which I've seen more and more in the last year, is that by working really, really hard and like that and not taking the breaks, you start to get fatigued. Fatigue creates a mental fog. That mental fog means that you don't necessarily lose your ability to do the tasks, but it definitely means you lose the perspective. So you're there working hard, looking at the pack, thinking, I need to really work on this, and you're doing a really good job because you're not losing your acuity, your ability to do it, but you have lost the clarity on what is needed. And if you stay in that state, it's very, very difficult to get the perspective shift to be able to say, okay, actually, what's really necessary? And once you're into that state, your to-do list starts to become more and more stressful. It becomes a harder and harder thing.
Because you're like, I have to do all of it, and I have to do all of it today.
Yeah, because the weariness takes away and the brain fog takes away from your perspective. And that becomes a catch-22, because if you stay in that state, you actually make your list longer. So if you make your list longer and harder and everything in it's harder, you kind of then go, oh shit, I need to work even harder now. I'll get up earlier tomorrow, I'll get going on my list. And you just work yourself to another state of brain fog, and you never get out of it. So you'll basically create a full catch-22 for yourself. But the alternative is to look after yourself, is to make sure, number one, you're taking breaks. Taking breaks during the day. That's a whole different episode really, but there's every break you have is like a reset, is a help to bring yourself, to stop yourself from getting down to a certain level, but we'll cover that in a different episode. Taking a break during the day, and also that kind of making sure you have a good stop time that you don't go past, so you can recuperate in the evening, you can re-energize
and wind down before you go to bed, so that you can actually get a good sleep.
Exactly, so you get a better sleep, and then in the morning doing the right actions in the morning, such as meditation or going for a nice walk, something that helps to kind of get your body moving and clear the mind, so that when you first start work you've got proper clarity and you're in a very rejuvenated state. Then you can
do your most important things.
Well, not just that, but before you do them,
you
can look at the list with pure perspective, and you're actually able to take yourself out of that fog and just look at it and go, what really is most important? And then that's the moment you say, all right, today I can do these 3 most important things, because those are the money makers, those are the things that are going to make me richer in the quicker time, and then you start with those things when you're clear and you've got great clarity and great perspective.
So really, it's if you're in that state where you're just like working loads of hours and you feel like everything is important, you're basically going to have to take a bit of a leap of faith to go, well, actually the most important thing for me is to stop at a sensible time and go to bed.
Which is really hard.
It's really hard.
I tell you, I know. You basically, I'm lucky I've got you, because
You're very lucky to have me, and I'm lucky to have you.
Oh, thanks. No, because I'm definitely fall into that trap, and I get to that point, 6 o'clock, I might as well go another hour, I'll just get this done, and suddenly it's 7:30, 8, and that's just when I'm just weary, and I'm just making bad decisions. It's really simple, bad decisions. And it would just be much better to not be working, and that's when you just tell me, Dave, you've got to stop.
So I guess the odds are that if you're in that state, unless you're going to have someone with external perspective who you're going to listen to, the odds are you are going to hit burnout. Like, it's kind of inevitable, because basically you're ignoring your body, and at some point your body will not let you ignore it anymore. It will create some sort of illness, mental breakdown, whatever it may be, to force you to listen to it. So you kind of have 2 choices really: listen to someone with some external perspective and be open enough to accept that your way is not serving you, or accept that you are going to probably have a bit of, or with blind faith say actually getting a good night's sleep and rest is really important. That's okay, it's 3 options. Just blind faith, and that these things are really important, that you should do them and start doing them. Number 2, external perspective and listen. Number 3, know that some sort of illness breakdown is ultimately coming. Who knows when it will be? It will be when it's the most inconvenient, and then the best.
Which has happened to both of us.
Yeah, multiple times.
As we've worked this out.
And really, when that does happen, if that does happen, you've got to see it as an opportunity to completely shift everything and rebuild yourself in a whole new way, and to not see it as a failing or a bad thing, that actually it's just actually your body and life actually taking care of you and saying, no, we're not doing it like this anymore. There we go, 3 uplifting options for you.
And I think I'd say that, do you know what, when you're building the business, when we were building the business, it was hard work, and we put a lot of hard work in, and we felt that we should put the hard work in because we felt like that's what was needed to get to the results. And we said that this on another episode, but basically the truth is, looking in hindsight, it is, it doesn't have to be hard work. No, you don't. It's not that we should have done hard work, but you do have to put work in, right? Yes. It's not easy. It's like you have to do the work. You have to do the work, but it doesn't have to be hard work. And I almost feel like we're so used to believing that the best things only come from putting that hard work in, that's another story. Make it harder. We'll like push on and say, but if I don't work a bit harder now, it will fail. If I don't do another hour now, I'm just not going to get this thing done. Like it's just not true most of the time. Like, there are occasions very rarely we work until say 9-10 o'clock at night because we've got a deadline for the next day, and you're like, fuck, there's no more there is no more time, right? There's no more time.
In a way sometimes it's good because it means that you cannot spend time on stuff that is not the most important thing.
That's true.
Because it's like, we don't have freaking time to do that thing that's clearly not in the 20% that's going to give us the 80%. It's out, and you're in and you're decided because you cannot. So
that probably happens once a year,
not
right?
even once a year, but yeah.
But yeah, it's just a decision around the time available.
Yes.
And saying, I'm not going to be beholden. I'm going to be a slave to it anymore.
And then it comes back to saying, what is the most important thing for me in my life? And I think you have a quite extreme example that I've heard you say a few times recently.
That's a really good one.
Go on, you say it.
No, I think you should say it. It's a good one. Go for
it. So we say that we don't have time. We don't have enough time. But if your daughter or a family member suddenly was taken to hospital with a serious injury, you'd be at that hospital.
You'd make the time. Yeah, I've had that with quite a few people. It's like, no, I need to do this. I have to do absolutely everything I'm doing. It's absolutely all essential stuff. But yeah, daughter goes into hospital. Suddenly, it's not essential anymore. It's like, oh shit, the priority's shifted. And I think we need to enact that in ourselves. And we're still learning, right?
I think we'll always be learning.
We'll always be learning. And so is everyone. Everyone just has to keep questioning themselves. And I think enacting that in yourself, for most people, I'd say it should be, especially at the earlier stages of business, most likely is going to be, rather than should, most likely is going to be money-related actions are the most highest priority. So you really need. There we go, that's how it works. So it's ideal if you can look at your current way of approaching all your tasks and say, which of these tasks should I be prioritising? Or could I be prioritising? Which of these tasks could I be prioritising on the basis that they are the ones that are going to lead to the money quickest? And the money-making tasks become highest priority, and then following on from that are the systemization tasks or the process tasks or the admin. Because actually, especially at the early stages of business, there's no point systemizing something that's not yet making you profit. It's simple as.
You're wasting your time.
Make your profit first. And as you always say, make the chaos first. Make your profit first. And once it's profitable, then systemize it. Because there's no point spending any seconds or minutes systemizing something
that does not work.
Doesn't work. So really getting that model profitable first. That's priority number one for a long time. Then when it's profitable, you move into a new phase and you say, okay, all right, it's a good profitable model, but it's really quite chaotic. Let's now look at how we can systemize it to optimize it.
I think it's kind of a broader point, which maybe there's another episode in, but it's like it's who and what you listen to at what phase. Because I think the problem is there's so much information out there and so many different people sharing advice, but is that advice relevant for you at the phase that you're at? Because I think it's so easy to confuse that and start working on all these different things, which actually some of them sabotage against each other. Maybe there's another episode there, but that just everything in its good order that serves you and what is important to you.
And that, I guess, brings me to thinking about who are you listening to generally, right? So are you listening to yourself, in which case you may well be stuck in your own self-sabotage? Are you listening to the people around you in your community, in which case you might be following advice that is from someone who doesn't yet know the answers?
Isn't doing what you want to do.
Who aren't even doing what you want to do. Is that the blueprint you want to follow? Or are you picking someone who has literally got the thing you're wanting and following their blueprint and their advice? Because to be honest with you, they've already made it, they've got what you're wanting, so their advice is probably going to be the right level of whatever it is, prioritization or what you should be focusing on, where you should be putting your attention.
Should.
Should.
You're very good for not doing it for yourself, but I think maybe you just still good at telling other people what you should do.
Very good at telling people to should do things.
Yes, that's a really good point. So basically deciding who you listen to based on if they have what you're trying to create for yourself. And then this comes back to like how exactly you then prioritize where you are spending your time based on what's most important to you. So my method for this is to be clear of your vision, what it is that you are trying to create for yourself. That's like a 5-10 year vision. Then you say, based on where I'm trying to head towards, what's the objective for the year ahead that's going to move me in the direction of that vision? Once you're clear on what that year objective is, then you go, okay, so the next quarter, what am I going to focus on? What are the 3 to 5 biggest priorities for the next quarter to move me towards that? And then every month you come and you look at those quarterly priorities and you say, what are the 3 to 5 things I'm going to focus on this month from a big business perspective that will move me towards those? And then every week you do the same. So you're just always keeping one eye towards the next thing. So on a weekly basis, you look at your monthly priorities, which are based on your quarterly priorities, which are based on your annual priorities, which are based on your vision. You don't look at all of that every single week. Like, you look at it at predefined intervals that make sense, and you just keep focusing on the next stage and what you've got to do to pull yourself towards it. And that just simplifies everything.
It's like climb mountains, isn't it? Just look at the next point. So how am I going to get to that point? You follow up there. Look at the next point on the route.
Yeah, you're right.
We're climbing a mountain here.
We are climbing a mountain, yeah, absolutely. Like, life and business is a journey.
And beautiful. And I'd say that there is the self-sabotage thing, right? The problem we all encounter in all of this is that business requires different things at different phases. Mm-hmm. And our personality type will be more suited to different things at different times. So this is nicely represented in wealth dynamics, where you have your 4 different areas. You've got your blaze energy on the right, blaze steel on the left. I can't remember what the other 2 are right now. It's just not coming to mind. But tempo at the bottom. I just can't remember what the top one is. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The fact is that the top area is all about creation and making something new and starting something. And the next area around the blaze is all about getting it going, getting it off the ground. And then the bottom is going to be more about timing and making things work well. And the last part is really about the systemization and getting it so it's more hands-off. The fact is that at different phases of your growth in what you're doing, different skill sets are needed, different personality types need to come to the forefront, but you of course are generally a fixed personality type, so you want to learn to become a chameleon. Pointing out what I nearly do, that's pretty harsh.
Sorry. I let you off for 2 before, that's why I said it.
So that concept of becoming a chameleon, so that when you're looking at your tendencies, what you feel like you want to do. So if you're a lord, you're going to feel the tendency to systemize something early, to get the process done very early, because that's what your natural inclination is. But if you're early day startup,
that's not what the business needs.
That's not what the business needs. So you have to fight those and really focus in on being that chameleon.
Yeah, and I think we think that our personality is fixed, but really we can really change it if we decide that we want to, and we practice it, which is one of the great things about meditation, right? Like, you can train yourself to be a new person.
Yeah.
And I think having your own business, you do have to learn to be a chameleon, like to be able to bring these, because we have all these elements within us. It's just about how we bring it to the fore, and some things require more energy to bring to the fore. So, like, you're not your natural left-hand sider, but if it was what the business required,
I would go networking.
I was just thinking networking.
I would network, and I would work really hard to overcome my tendencies of not being very good at networking. I would practice that. I would find ways to talk to more people. I would utilize that part of that I could in my personality to make what's needed for the business happen.
And not use your personality as an excuse to not do it.
Yes.
Because the problem is, if you are not a creator, starting is going to be hard. Like, it's going to be much harder for you than it is for a creator. So therefore, find the creator part of yourself, develop it, and you've got to find that part in your day where you are most mentally resilient to be that person, to put on that hat and be like, today I'm gonna be the Richard Branson who goes out and finds the opportunities and makes stuff happen, and I get out of my comfort zone. And then, when I'm feeling more tired and like that, just like it makes me feel sick to the idea, then I'll sit and I'll do some admin or whatever, like whatever's more like relevant to your profile. But you don't use your profile as an excuse to not do the things, because it will really hold your business back.
And this is where that concept, totally same but different point, but that concept of outsourcing everything that you're not comfortable with suddenly falls over, because if you just use your profile or who you are as a kind of fixed point, it becomes a crutch, and you try and just get someone else to do everything that you don't like doing from the start, your business...
Good luck making money with that.
It just won't get off the ground.
Then you probably need like at least 4 people then to get a business off the ground. So then if there's going to be 4 of you and it's 4 ways, there's more complexity with 4 people coming together to make that happen, and you've got to literally do 4 times as much to make the same money for you individually.
Now the end goal is that, right?
Yeah, of
the
course.
end goal is to have all those positions over. There's a period of time where you want
Suck
to
it up.
just
Like, know that it's important for your business, know that you've selected that as the most important thing in your life, and just get it done, and like become that person and figure out how you can become that person who can get those priorities done. That is the path to money in the shortest time. And let's link this back to, go on.
I was about to let's link this back to the point of the main focus of this episode, to time basically, becoming a creator of time. By doing that, you're always able to find, with good perspective, the most important thing for your business at any one time, so that you can prioritize those actions, which means the business is always getting what it needs, which means there's always enough time. There's always enough time to do what the business needs. Now the list is never ending, so there's never enough time to completely tick off every single job.
And you don't need to.
Because you don't need to. You just choose the priority
top
things
3 to 5 things every
that will
single
get
week.
the business moving forwards. And that is how you become a creator of time. And you will, it makes so much difference, because for us it's like suddenly able to just clock off, knowing I've done the priority jobs that need doing, and it's fine, clocked off. Still got stuff on the to-do list, it's still never ending, but I've got time
be at peace with the to-do list being in place.
Yeah, and I've got time to have the relaxing time, as well as time to do the business, as well as time to do the client calls, whatever it is that the business needs. It happens, there's time for it.
And there is time for it because you have basically said, those are the things that I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to overcome the parts of myself that's holding me back from doing those. Like, if you know that those 3 to 5 things are the most important things and you're not doing them, explore different ways of approaching getting them done and finding easier ways to get them done, because they're available if you open your mind to alternative ways of looking at the situation, and don't box yourself in by saying that's just how it has to be done, because it's not true. Thank you so much for joining us on the latest episode of the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. If you're enjoying the show and you think you know a friend who would enjoy this episode and benefit from shifting the mindset around time in the run up to Christmas, please do share this with a friend. So for now, all that remains for me to say is enjoy the run up to Christmas. This can be a really wonderful time of year if we let it, but if we get bogged down in the detail of all the stuff that we haven't done, it really ruins the joy of this time of year. So reflect on the great things that you have achieved, and know that what's most important now is to enjoy and rest and allow that brain to switch off a bit over the Christmas period, so that you can come into 2024 feeling refreshed. Now, next week, we are joined by Mike Stenhouse on the episode, which is about 4 wheels or 2 hulls. What's better for running your property business remotely from? Is it a catamaran or is it a motorhome? So a really fun episode with Mike and Dave just before Christmas. So we will see you next week, but until then, enjoy all the magic of the festive season. Loads of love.